Hey, friends, and welcome to the Soulfire Sessions at the intersection of passion and purpose, where you align with what sets your soul on fire. I'm your host, Alex, and I am so grateful that you are here with us today. We are all about reclaiming clarity, rebuilding confidence, and designing a future that actually fits you. So take a breath, feel the spark, and let's step into the fire. Hi, Robert.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. How are you?
Doing well.
Good. I'm so glad you're with us today.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here. I love the introduction, by the way, where passion meets purpose. That's perfect.
Yes, that's what we're all about, which I think is very similar to what you're about.
Yeah, well, and again, it really aligns with who we want to be in our lives, right? And how do we continue to evolve over time in a meaningful way?
That's right. Well, I'm going to introduce you to our listeners so they know who you are and why we have you on our podcast today. So, Robert, guys, is a purpose driven, results focused professional who's passionate about helping people. Sounds familiar. And organizations actualize their full potential. Leveraging his diverse strategic and operational experiences, he skillfully drives, designs, and deploys holistic end-to-end solutions that achieve positive outcomes for both profit and people. And throughout Robert's career as an HR professional and a small business owner, he has consistently translated strategies into actions, theory into practical applications, and solutions into meaningful results. That's a lot of words.
It sure is.
Tell us what that means. Give us your story. Just start about your journey. How'd you get to where you're at today?
Yeah. So my journey, I think, really starts out where I grew up at, which is outside of Cedar Rapids, Iowa, on a small town Iowa farm. I grew up in a family of six total, so I'm the youngest of four brothers, and then my mom and dad working on our family farm. And throughout that is really where I think my journey began. And the reason why I say that is because with three older brothers, four boys total, we had a really fun upbringing on the farm, right? Did the chores, of course, but also did fun things like we built a golf course out of our farm. Like we used the old frosting cups to make a golf course, right? Like that was something we did around the farm. And we also were highly competitive with one another. So we had basketball, baseball, all the sports we were doing out there on the farm, and just really enjoyed connecting as brothers and competing as brothers as well. I think for me, the pivotal moment, especially when I was growing up, was when my brother Matt, he is 10 years older than me, he was choosing between which college he wanted to go to. And at the time, I remember my parents really sitting down with my brother and saying, hey, just so you know, like our goal in life is to help the brothers get one step further in life than we are. And at the time, I was 8 years old, right? My brother was 18, choosing between what school he's going to go to. And it was in that moment that I realized that's a pretty profound statement. And for whatever reason, at 8 years old, I really reflected deeply on that. And it became a innate part of my identity as I grew throughout life. And we're going to come back to that here in a second. But at 8 years old, thought about that statement, realized that, like, okay, my goal is to also help others get one step further than I am. Fast forward, my brothers played college basketball. I decided to play college football. I went to the University of Northern Iowa to play college football there. And at the time, I was going to do physical therapy. Like, for me, it was a twofold reason why. Number one, I wanted to repay my mom and dad for all of the work that they put in to take care of my brothers and I, right? Secondly, like as a college athlete, I could then repair my own body as time went on. And that was really important to me as well.
Yeah.
And when I was at the University of Northern Iowa playing football there, I was playing full time football, working part time, and then doing school full time as well. So I was very, very busy between all of those, right? And as I was leaving there, I was choosing between different colleges to go to for graduate school and realizing that that's going to cost a lot of money. So I just needed to get a job because I needed to make sure I had like 15 bucks an hour just to save a little bit of money before I got to grad school. And at the time, there was that organization here locally that offered me an internship because I had a couple of brothers that worked there. And I was working there for a little while. And as I was working there, they were like, hey, you have a knack for a lot of these mentoring, coaching, talent development type projects. Because again, like that's very similar to the football world, but you're doing that inside the context of business. And they asked, like, would you be interested in this? And at first I was like, no, I'm good. Like, I'm going to do physical therapy. That's really where I want to go, right? And about a month later, they came back and said, "Hey, again, you're doing really good in these areas. Would this ever be something for you to consider?" And I took some time to reflect. And what I found was that my passion and my purpose in life was really about helping others develop capabilities to maximize their potential rather than restoring them to a physical baseline. Once I understood that I could take the same concepts I learned from coaching on the field into coaching in business and developing players like you would on the field and developing people inside of a business, like I really realized that my purpose was to help others get one step further than I was by helping them like develop their full capabilities and helping them self-actualize their full potential. So
That's awesome.
that distinction I never thought of before until that moment.
That's great. And I want to say this because this is something that I have studied and people a lot of times don't think about. Like, even in the business world, I think it's really important though. A lot of times we have programs, processes, all that, whatever, insert word here, that bring people from this negative level to a neutral level, right? Like, you're in burnout mode, so I'm just going to make sure you're no longer in burnout mode. Or you're stressed, so let me reduce your stress. But we're just bringing them to like zero. And I think it's important that a lot of organizations just don't think about this, but we need to not just bring them back to zero, which we have to bring them back to zero right first, but then how do we move that line up? How do we put positive things in their life that helps them actualize their full potential, as you're saying? And so I love that you brought that part up.
Yeah, well, I think too, like self-actualize also means that like number one, self, they have to own it. I can't want it more than they want it. And then actualize is like, yes, there's potential, but how do you build the habits, the focus, the clarity? Go back to soul fire, right? Like, how do you build
Yeah.
that clarity to know what do you want, how do you get there, and then what habits do you need to make sure you get there as well, right? To actualize that potential into performance and production. And I think that's the part that really energizes me, right? Where it's just like, hey, we are all capable of doing so much, but we just need to have that process in place or that focus in place to get us to translate that potential into performance within our lives as well.
Yeah. So, okay. So you got to this moment where you're like, okay, this is what I want to do.
Yeah.
And I know we talked about like you had like a turning point. There was like a moment in time where you said, I'm going to really start focusing on this. So tell me what this is so the listeners know what this I know what this is, but tell the listeners what this is.
Yeah, so as soon as I figured out like this is where I really want to spend my time and my focus throughout my career, right? I was like, okay, I know a lot about biology, not a lot about business, right? And so I kind of went down this pathway of went to go my master's to make sure that I understood the business world, but also really walking through this concept of like range, which is a book by David Epstein. Talks a lot about how 1% of the population masters their craft through the Tiger Woods method, which is you specialize at a young age all the way to the top of your game. But the other 99% or so really get a wide range of experiences, see what they're good at, what they love, and then they specialize based upon that, right? And for me, that's kind of the pathway it took. I knew from that point in time, really want to develop my skill set in coaching, mentoring, talent development, performance excellence, those components. And I wanted to make sure I got a for-profit, nonprofit look at a local, national, regional, global scale, and also making sure it's in strategic and operational HR, right? So that's been kind of my scope, and I underwent what's called the Decade of Discovery, and I spent my last decade really focusing in on those components of experiences, so that way I could understand like how do I tailor my experience, my expertise to the situation at hand by getting that wide range of experience, right? And so until this time, like I really was just focused on the professional growth. Like my wife and I, we were having kids, like we were growing, right? And I remember in 2022 when our second kiddo was born, I had kind of this moment of like clarity where, hey, rocking and rolling professionally, but my health was not where I wanted it to be. And I knew that in order for me to be a high performing professional, high performing father, high performing husband, like I had to really dial in on my health. And I went down this health journey where I went from uh, I lost like 80 pounds in about a year just by really focusing in on my nutritional habits, exercising correctly, and really taking care of myself. And that was kind of pivotal for me. But it was also kind of this turning point where I realized, well, if I'm being intentional about just health and I'm seeing these results in such a short amount of time, what are the other core areas of my life that I really want to focus in on as well? So I created this life blueprint in 2023, which is really focused in on 6 core areas of my life. There is my professional, my personal, my community life, my social, financial, and then my well-being, my health, right? And within each of these 6 core areas, I really dialed in on what are my intentions as I engage in those areas to make sure I'm doing things effectively, intentionally, and really with purpose. What are the standards, not goals, standards, like what's that always must be there in place to make sure I'm operating effectively in each of these 6 core areas. And then down the road, like what's the impact I want to have, right? So I have clarity of vision of where I want to go, the impact I want to have, the standards I set in place that I'm going to hold myself to, and then the intentions as I go through the daily interactions in each of those 6 core areas as well.
That's amazing. That's some deep work, like, and not just in one area, you dove into 6 areas.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's been part of the journey, right? Like we all have our own
Yeah.
unique journey. And it was, I think that the health journey that I was on really sparked it. And then throughout my life in the last 3 years or so, like I always think about defining moments as a key reflective point for me. Death. So I had a couple grandpas that passed that were very near and dear to our family. Like, what did I learn from them? And then also life, like becoming a father once, then twice, then now our third kiddo. Like, there's new levels of understanding, maturity, things that come with that have really evolved the way I think and how I operate day to day, and how it's really informed my life blueprint that I built.
That's incredible. Like, I don't know that most people do deep work like that, but you're right. I think in order to find clarity and figure out how you can operate as your best self, and then from there, how you can help others operate at their best self, you have to do that deep work.
Absolutely. And I remember I had a professor once that said, when you think about your health, don't think about it in terms of what can you do for yourself, but do it for those that depend on you. And I think that was kind of a really important message for my health at the time, right? Like when it was 2022. But I also thought about that in other areas. Like if I'm going to be the best that I can be and do what I need to do for those that depend on me, what are the areas I need to make sure are locked in and focused in to make sure that I'm maximizing the potential and turning that into performance and production, and also making sure I'm enjoying the moment as I do that, right? Like I want to make sure I'm present um, with my family, with the work I'm doing, with the people I'm serving, so on and so forth.
Yeah. Okay. So, because I don't know why this question keeps coming up into my head, so I'm just going to ask it.
Yeah.
Of those 6 areas, which area do you feel like was easiest, quote unquote, for those that are just listening? And which section do you feel like was the most challenging for you?
I think the easiest one was professional to start out with because I thought about that one the longest and the hardest initially. But then secondarily, it was the health part, right? Like I was focusing on that because I knew I needed to make sure that my health was in order.
Yeah.
Um, but I think that it's easier to focus on the clarity, but building the discipline habits from a week in and week out basis is always hard too, because we live in a culture where we celebrate by food and social life, right? And that's great stuff. But some of that tends to bring like the buffalo chicken dip that I can never get enough of, right? Or
Right.
or the treats that we have over the holidays, right? And I think that's something that I had to be really cognizant of is how do I maintain a really healthy lifestyle while also enjoying the moment with my friends and family and the food that I love so much.
Yeah. I think that that's something that I've also a journey I've been on for about a year now as well, and not just working out or not just eating well, but trying to do both things and really focusing on consistency. And my coach often says, like, just don't have shame around it. So if you do choose, I mean, obviously don't choose to eat Twinkies every day, right? Like that's not beneficial for my body. But like if you do choose to go to a Christmas party and they have sugar and you choose to eat that sugar, like don't have shame around it. Like the next day you just try again, right? Like you try to do. And so I think that's really important to remember too. And I think having that goal as a standard instead of a goal, right? Like this is just how I live my life at bare minimum. This is my standard is important. So I'm glad you said that too.
Yeah, and I think that was actually a big mindset shift for me initially. When I was first on my journey, I remember people saying like, "Oh, you're just doing this other diet now to lose weight, right?" And what I was working to articulate was that this is actually just a standard of how I want to eat and operate on a regular basis. Like this, to me, this is no longer going to be a diet that's temporary. It's going to be a standard of how I live day in and day out. And while that standard is going to flex to a degree when it comes to moments of enjoyment, right? Like that makes a lot of sense because you have to enjoy life. But from a majority of time, like this is the standard I'm going to be living towards and making sure that I am eating the right type of calories, right? That's fruit, vegetables, meat. We're thinking about those components of the quality of calories versus the quantity always, right? Like
For
those are
sure.
really the key pieces. So all in all, I just really feel like that the discipline focus around the standard allows you to really dial in on the habits that are serving you and not serving you and make sure that they're sustainable over time.
Okay, so let's talk about that because I think that is huge for our listeners. So, when looking at setting a standard versus setting a goal, do you have like application for them? Like, how do you do that?
Yeah, so when I think about standards, I think about what is reasonable, disciplined, not rigid, but reasonable and disciplined and able to flex to your lifestyle, right? And so, like, it's really a choice. So, for example, in health, I have vitality and longevity as my intentions, and my standards are healthy mind gut connection, optimized nutritional habits, and then daily wellness practices. Like, those are my three standards, right? And so I think about that when it comes to standards because within those, I can say, like, okay, what kind of food do I want to have that would allow me to have a healthy mind gut connection? What's the right nutrition based upon this week? So, like, as I plan out my week, do I know that Thursday night's going to be buffalo chicken dip night because it's a football game or whatever it may be, like potentially so, right? So I can at least focus on my nutrition earlier in the week to then make sure I can balance that out down the road, right? So the standard I think is really more of like, what is the standard I want to focus in on? And then those habits are like the tactical decisions you make in the moment, day to day, weekly, to really ensure that the standard is met throughout the time.
That's great. I think I don't know, like, because it still kind of can feel confusing, goal versus standard. But I think if your goal is to eat healthier, or your goal is to lose weight, or your goal is to work out every day, or whatever that goal is, then from there, you can set your standard. Like, okay, my standard is like, it's not reasonable for me to say I'm going to lift weights 5 days a week, but it's reasonable for me to say I'm going to lift at least 3 days a week. So
Yes,
my standard is every week I'm going to lift 3 days a week.
absolutely. Yep. I think that's really key. And again, like your standard could also, yeah, 3 times a week, or even so, like I need to focus on strength training of some sort 3 times a week. So therefore, it doesn't have to be just strength training. It could be resistance training. It could be some of these other
Sure.
components that are really tying into the overall standard that you have.
So the standard doesn't have to be so specific. It could be flexible, but understanding the person just needs to understand what that means. Like what is the standard confinement? If you want it to be very specific, that's fine. But if you want to give yourself some flexibility within that, then it doesn't have to be so specific.
Yeah, absolutely. I think about standard in terms of executing with intent and executing to a result, like the result as well. Like the goal is going to be temporary. It's going to be 90 day, 6 month, 9 month, a year. But the standard is okay. I'm going to execute every week 3 times, three working out 3 times, strength training 3 times, whatever it may be. 2,000 calories of high quality calories. What does that look like? Those are things that I can do on a day to day basis and execute with intent to reach that standard.
So when you started this though, because you didn't just go, I'm going to do all 6 sections right now and I'm going to set 3 standards for every section and I'm going to start tomorrow. Like you kind of have to roll that out, right?
Yeah. So when I first started, I sat down and looked at like, okay, what am I already doing that I want to continue to do? What are the things that I want to add into my routine, my focus, my standards of excellence, and how am I going to do that effectively, right? So I think for me, I really dialed in on what am I doing already in each of these six core areas. And then I went one by one over a 2 month period. So one area got 2 months to focus in on my standards, the habits, and then embedding them before I moved into the next area and said, okay, based upon this, what are my standards, my behaviors, and the habits I want to put in place, right? So I really focused in on those over the last 2 or 3 years, where each area got a period of 2 months to focus in on. And then as soon as I got done, I actually went back and did kind of a fine tuning exercise, which is, are these actually realistic? Can I achieve these things on a regular basis? Or is it something that like it's aspirational versus daily execution? And then I really refined it from there. It's a continuous journey. There's no doubt about that. Like this is a great blueprint for where I'm at today and where I want to continue to move forward, but as I continue to evolve, like this will evolve with me.
Yeah, I mean, life changes, right? Like you might have different job where you're now commuting or traveling, so you have to reset your standard because you might not be able to lift weights how many days a week, or your food situation might change, or insert all the things that life throws at us. And so, or you meet your goal. I've lost the weight I wanted to lose. So now my eating habits can change a little bit. Like I don't need to have less calories. I need maybe to be on a maintenance plan or whatever that looks like. So,
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's really important to note too, is like as the time transitions and you're thinking about, okay, maybe I've reached the goal. Does the standard stay the standard or does the standard evolve with me? Right? And I think that's something that's really healthy to reflect on too. And the standard should always evolve in the positive direction, but the positive direction is also dependent upon the individual and also their needs at the time, right? I remember
absolutely.
like when I had one kiddo with my wife, like we were just sitting there here during COVID, like working, right. And I remember working longer hours, but as we have two kids now 3 kids, like my work life integration needs to be much cleaner, much seamless, more focused because I want to make sure that I'm giving it all to, again, being a father, being a husband, and also being a professional. And I think this really allows me to, this blueprint that I'm holding up, that for those that are listening, allow me to make decisions intentionally on a day in and day out basis to make sure I'm doing the best I can in each of these areas. Maybe not perfectly, but at least I'm doing the best I can with what I have that day.
Yes. And I think part of my everyday life saying or motto or whatever you want to call it is progress over perfection. We're not perfect, and hitting every single thing every day, if that happens, that's amazing. Like, yay, me, high five. But if it doesn't happen, again, no shame. Like, okay, why didn't it happen? Let me reflect and see, like, was it because of this or that? Okay, that's great. Now I'm prepared for next time when that happens again. I can pivot or do something different.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think something that I've been implementing this year is I've been focusing in on how do I focus on daily execution, but measure according to a weekly or monthly cadence. So if I want to work out 3 times a week, well, there's gonna be some weeks that I may be traveling. There may be things that are happening, right? And so did I was able to make that up in another week. And so the daily things matter because you're focusing on executing with intention, but also the measurement of success can be over a period of time as long as it's happening routinely and it becomes a habit over time too. So I think that gives, for me, that is a recovering perfectionist. Like I definitely am a recovering perfectionist. That gives me
Same,
some understanding of like, how do I know it's a real thing, right?
same.
And I'm just thinking like, how do I measure success knowing that I, in my head, want to make sure I'm doing the best I can each and every day, and that that's still a good thing. That's a measure of success, even though I didn't wasn't able to get my 45-minute workout in today, right? As long as I make that up at another time throughout the month.
Yeah. If somebody wants to go down this path of their discovery, we at Soulfire call it a life wheel. We have a similar thing with our coaches, but I think there's a lot out there too. They could just Google it.
Yeah, I, I think so too. I think there's a lot of different concepts around that piece, right? It's really about how do you provide that clarity to you as an individual. That's where the value comes in. This is my 6 core areas of life. This is my blueprint, and every person's is going to be unique based upon the individual, as it should be. And I think that this the process of discovering who you are, who you want to be, how you want to live, really adds the value to the habits, the clarity, the focus that you're going to live your life with from there on out.
Yes. I love that you said it was tied to the individual because there are people who have maybe half of those areas. They're good. They've been doing this. They work out, they eat well, they are great in their career. Maybe they have great financial health, all the things, right? Like,
Yeah.
and then there's other people that are struggling with all of them and need help in all of them. And so I think it is important, but I want to say it again because I think listeners need to hear this again. just to come back to what you said, like it didn't all happen overnight. Like you intentionally had been working on your professional part for a while, had been working on your health journey for over a year, and then said, "Okay, now I'm going to focus on these other areas." And for you it was 2 months per area. For others it could be a month, it could be 6 months. Like it
Yeah,
has to be what works best for you in your life.
absolutely. It's an experience. It's basically an experiential based approach versus a time based approach. And I think that's
Yes.
really, really important, right? And so the more opportunities we give ourselves to experience our thoughts, our reflections, and how it's interacting with our life, but also the people around us, the more we're going to be able to dissect this at a good pace, right? I think for me, part of what accelerated my life blueprint development was the passing of my two grandpas, right? Like that happened within a 6 month time frame, and those were both major reflective points for me that allowed me to think about, okay, like what did I learn from them? How do they shape who I am? And also, how is that going to inform how I want to move forward, right? Now, again, like that was something that worked for me, like the having that reflective point with my grandpa's passing, like while very sad, like that's something that helped me get into a deeper state of reflection, right? And so I think about that often in terms of, again, life, new kiddos, death, my grandpa's passing, and then defining moments, like those moments where people have questions that you're like, oh, I never thought about that, or there's a intersection of your life where you're realizing you have to make a decision, and that can change the trajectory not only for you but for the people that depend on you. And those defining moments really allow you to get some additional clarity, and this really allows you to build this life blueprint.
Yeah. Remind me, did you say there was a community section?
Yes, there is. Yep.
So we talk a lot about community and Soulfire because we think it's important that you have a community of people around you to help you with these things, right? Like we're not saying go find a blueprint and do it all by yourself. I mean, if that works for you, if that works for you, then do that. But I think it's great to get other people's perspectives and ask people questions or have people ask you questions because like you just said, sometimes you're asked a question that is something you didn't think about and it makes you think in a different way.
100%. And I think that's healthy too, right? Like while
Yeah.
the blueprint always needs to be unique to you, sometimes people will say something in a way that really sparks another thought or branches another opinion that you're like, oh, I didn't think about that. Like, okay, I should think about that. And that really allows you to think holistically. I always say that people are always like, it's an absolute right or wrong. I'm like, no, it depends, right? And there's always this gray space that we need to navigate, understand like, what does that look like for me? Or as a person, as a professional, as a husband, as a father, as a wife, like those different components in order to make sure that you're living your truly authentic life and you're operating in a way that reflects those.
Yeah. So, one of the questions that we like to ask, this is a great pivot point. One of the questions we like to ask people to start them thinking, and I'm going to ask you
All
right
right.
now, is what sets your soul on fire?
For me, it's really helping others self actualize their full potential. That energizes me. Again, like the self part, like they have to want it more, but when they take ownership of their own growth, development, reflection, production performance, like you can see that ownership, right? And then actualization is more about like taking that concept into true application and true performance and helping them through that process is really rewarding because you're able to see them grow and you start seeing them like have those moments of brilliance that you knew they knew they had, but they're actually coming to fruition now, right? Which is amazing.
That is amazing. And that's an amazing answer. Like, that is literally soul fire. That
I
felt very soul
true
fire.
true alignment. Honestly, when I was seeing the work that you all do, I was like, yeah, this is true alignment here. This is good.
That's so good. Okay, so then if you were to give advice to somebody else trying to figure out what sets their soul on fire, what advice would you give them?
Yeah, so great question. A lot of what I do is try to take them down from like the tactical focus down into the conceptual reflective focus. And so what I usually have them do is go out to Google and find a sheet of skills and a sheet of values, right? And I kind of start them off with some of these basic tactical items of like, okay, think about the skills you have. Which ones do you love using? Which ones are you really good at? Which skills are the areas that you want to use more of because they interest you? And then using that information to kind of get them to think deeply about what's their capabilities, what's their skill set, and then moving into their values. I think about like narrow it down to your top 15 values and then narrow it down to your top 5 values. So that way it's like continuing to shrink that into like, okay, now who am I and how does that inform how I operate, right? And then from there, I think about, okay, we're getting you reflecting on some of the very tangible items. Well, let's talk about your journey line. Like, talk to me about your life story. And I help them think about like defining moments, life, death, and all these components that really help them think about what shaped me and how does that inform how I'm working today as a person, like again, professional, personal, whatever it may be. And then I use that as an opportunity to help them think about like, now how's that going to inform you moving forward? So using like those 3 tactics, I kind of move them from like this tangible reflection down into more of this conceptual reflective and a very gradual approach to make sure that I can meet them where they're at. They can continue to come back to this and know how to kind of get down into a deeper reflective state. And that allows them to see what that sets their soul on fire.
That's amazing. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. But again, like it's something that is easy to do, but hard. It's just easy to say, but harder to do, right? Easy to
Yeah.
say, like, this is a great process to follow. Harder to actually be the busy one day in and day out to sit down and give yourself 30 minutes and give yourself permission to focus on yourself for 30 minutes as you work through each of these exercises.
But that's so important. And I think that we make time for the most random things, right? Like we make time to scroll social media for an hour and we make time to watch crazy television shows and like whatever random, like drive to the coffee shop and get coffee, like whatever random things we make time for. And so just for me, I have to like build in time in my day, even if it is just 15 or 20 minutes to one, be alone,
Yeah.
right? Like just have alone time, even if it's just hiding in my closet. That's so funny. I say that a lot, but I actually have a big closet, but like it's not like a tiny little hole in the wall that I'm like crawling into, but um like just to have time to breathe, to have time to think. For me, because I am part of a recovery ministry, one of the things we talk about is daily inventory or weekly inventory. And so, like, what's something that didn't go so great today? And what is my part of that? And how can I make amends for that? But also, part of that is like, what's something that went really well today? And how did that make you feel? And how can you continue to do that type of thing to bring you joy or peace or whatever that thing was? And so, this is very similar in terms of like, you have to make time again, even if it's 15, 20, 30 minutes a day to, if you want change, you have to make the time to dig through those things so that change can happen.
Yeah, absolutely. And like that work life integration or even just integrating those practices is really important. For me, like I know my morning walks is actually the most creative, deep thought time of my day. And it's early in the morning, right? So like I'm able to get in, think about it in terms of like what is creative, like new solutions or new things that I could be doing for work or for my house or whatever it may be. But also thinking about like what's on my plate today, what's the most important thing, what about my week, what about my month, and being deeper and more intentional about those things. The other thing that I have learned is pre-COVID, the drive to work and from work was also another key like moment of silence where I could be more reflective. And now that we have a hybrid working schedule, I mean, you have that aspect of it maybe not being there as much, right? So you have to be even more intentional about connecting to yourself as an individual throughout the day and giving your time space to think about like all the components you're working through, who you want to be like on a deeper reflective level, and then how is that going to inform who you want to be in the future.
That's true. So before we wrap up, do you have like one or two very tangible action steps that people could do what you're just talking about? Like give them an example of one or two things they could do through their day.
Yeah. So here's the one thing that I usually do. Sunday evening, I sit down and look at my calendar throughout the week. And based upon my calendar, I focus in on what is 2 hours per day, if possible, that I can have focus time. And with that focus time, what are some of the tactical things I want to get done? And then schedule that other hour as a reflective time, right? Just as you're getting started. And what you're going to start noticing is that, to your point earlier, we start filling our week with things that may not necessarily be the most important, but they're the easiest to do, like grab our phones and look through social media or whatever it may be, right? So I think that's something that I have done pretty consistently the last year and a half, is that Sunday evening scheduling. So it allows me to hit Monday quickly and also get those quick wins and be more intentional about my week moving forward. And then the second piece I would do is I would think about, again, who you are as an individual and what helps you reflect the most, and then schedule that something daily. So for me, I know it's my walk in the morning. I'm going to schedule that daily, right? Doesn't need to be long. It just needs to happen to give myself some space. For others, it's reading. For others, it's, again, that drive to work or drive home from work. For others, it's literally simply going to sit in a sauna. Like, what is that practice that works best for you, that gives you space to reflect, to take a breath, to take a moment, and then also start incorporating some of these deeper reflective thought processes down the road.
Those are great steps. Thank you for that, because sometimes I think it sounds great. Like we're all like, yes, like I can see our listeners nodding, like, I need to do that. But then you're like, how do I do that?
Yeah.
So that's great. And I think a lot of us do those things. We're just not maybe using that time in the way we could be using it, you know?
Yeah. And again, like, this is where that weekly scheduling has really been the game changer for me, because even though I said I want to do it daily, like, every day is different and you have to be fluid and flexible because life is fluid and flexible. But being able to intentionally plan out a week ahead of time, okay, where is the best time it probably could happen, increases your chances of success in doing so, right? Again, life changes, things change, schedules changes, but at least it gives you an opportunity to say, like, okay, on Tuesday, I know I'm probably going to actually do my walk in the afternoon, not the morning, because I have to have a really early morning for work, right? And being very intentional with that, so that way you know what's coming and you don't feel out of rhythm, which then allows it, could make it harder for you to get into a deeper reflective state.
Yes, that's great. Well, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. This is fun. This is great. And
Yeah,
Soulfire, I really appreciate the work you all do. And passion meets purpose. That really resonates with me.
that's awesome. Thank you. Where can our listeners find you?
You can find me on LinkedIn, Robert Rathje, or at www.optimizegrowth.com. And optimize is spelled OPTIMYZED. So that way, you should be able to find me in those two areas.
Awesome. And we'll put those both in the show notes so people can find you. And you guys can find us at thesoulfire.com. We're also on social media, Facebook and LinkedIn. We are the Soulfire Collective. And on Instagram, we are the Soulfire Co. Thanks again, Robert. And thank you to the listeners. And we'll see you next time.
Excellent. Thank you all.